There is login information for GoToMeeting on our website, the town website, as well as dial-in information if you'd like to join us by phone. And might as well start. The first item on the agenda is a request for determination of applicability for 15 Island Pond Road, map 40. Robin, this is yours. It doesn't matter, whichever
Wherever
you're
you're
comfortable with.
I'll stand here if that's okay.
Sure.
I'd rather stand, if I can. Can you hear me? So I did send in a map around the Lily Pond area, and I believe that everyone has received it. And then Amy took a picture today inside the button bush area. So what we are requesting is that to come only 4 feet from the edge of a grave space, and the only one that's actually within that parameters right now is the Weeks lot, and then one other lot, which is on the corner. The rest of them are like within 5, or some of them are even 10 feet from the edge of the vegetation. So they don't need any pruning whatsoever or removal of any vegetation. We have taken photographs before we've done anything. After we remove anything, we will resubmit the photographs of what we did take for you guys, just for your record. And we probably won't do any pruning and probably till the spring, I would assume, or early.
Well,
Yeah,
You could do it fall.
you can do it in the fall. Anyways, so we probably want to prune anywhere between 4 to 5 feet. 5 feet would be the maximum height that we would want to have the vegetation, just so we don't obstruct the view of the pond. But that's what we're asking for.
Good. Amy, any commentary?
Yep, at the last meeting, the commission just wanted a little bit more clarity on what was gonna be done in terms of more of a plan. So without having like an official plan, Robin put together a plan that showed the area and showed the extent on either side, which is basically where the grave spaces are on the north side of the Lily Pond. And I sent them the photo that we took today so you could see the approximate height that she would like to prune down to. It's buttonbush and some sassafras, and the encroachment onto the Weeks grave in particular. I think that's very reasonable to ask to keep that pruned back. And I think with proper pruning techniques, which I'm happy to guide on, that you can achieve without really harming the buttonbush or the sassafras, be able to prune to a height of between 4 to 5 feet in that area. So I would recommend approval with it's a -2 determination.
Okay, thank you. Alan, any comments?
No comment.
Jim?
No comment.
Brad?
No thanks.
John?
No comments.
Mark?
Nope.
No, and I have no comments either. I think we discussed at the last meeting, you'll actually be removing the vegetation and reseeding that area, correct?
Yeah, and Amy's going to recommend some type of low ground cover for that area, just so it doesn't erode. And that it's starting to erode kind of around with that, by the Weeks lot specifically. I don't know if it was from runoff or whatever, but it has an erosion starting, the memorial starting to.
Okay. All right, good. Can we have a motion on this?
I'll move to approve the RDA for 15 Island Pond Road, map 40, parcel V3 with a -2 determination.
We have a second.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? We're good.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next item on the agenda is a request for a determination of applicability for 8 Seaway. Remove an existing dwelling and appurtenances and construct a new dwelling with associated hardscape and septic system.
Good evening, Dan Croto from Ryan Engineering. I'm here for Tom and Elaine Monahan, who want to demolish their existing house and put up a new house. Tom is in the audience for questions. Part of the lot, actually to the northeast, is in the floodplain, and, which is actually not the direct route to the water, but it goes around a piece of land and connects to Nantucket Sound. So the house itself is not within the floodplain, but the existing parking and the proposed parking is within the floodplain. So that's what, that's why I'm here. And there's not much change in the floodplain area. They do want to, right now it's shell parking. They do want to make it hard surface, either pavement or concrete. It was originally pavement or concrete. They changed it to shell. They've had negative issues with the shell. So they would like to go back to a hard surface, and then to take care of the drainage, we're going to put in a trench drain. We'd like to put in a trench drain and a leach pit. And so I will leave it at that.
Okay, thank you.
So we're only talking about land subject to coastal storm flowage. There's no other wetland resource area within jurisdiction here. The house, the existing and proposed house are all outside of the flood zone, so we're only talking about the driveway and a couple of low retaining walls and lawn area that's jurisdictional. As Dan said, they're going from a pervious to impervious, but they do have a trench drain that goes to a pit to infiltrate any runoff, so I think that is acceptable. I would recommend approval with a -2. Our typical condition of no fertilizers or chemicals in the flood zone. And I'd be happy if the owner ever wanted to, because it's kind of a weird flood zone line, if you ever wanted to chat about different types of lawn and lawn care products.
I appreciate that.
Or seed mixes and things like that, I would be more than happy to talk to you about that. But with the condition on that, I would recommend approval.
Thank you. Alan, questions?
No comment.
No comments.
Brad? No thanks. John?
No comments.
Just two questions for you. One is one question. You mentioned negative issues with the shell driveway.
Yes.
What kind of issues were those?
The first one was snow plow and snow blower, I guess, throwing the shells all over the place. The second one that I can think of is now with the garage, with the addition of the garage, the slope of the driveway itself has to be, there has to be a slope to the driveway.
Yeah.
So having it a hard surface will be helpful there. And then if you want more, Tom can probably give you more.
Oh, that's fine. All relative, there's nothing from a conservation perspective there that's
No,
causing any
it's not
concerns.
it's a type of floodplain that's the ocean itself, so any drainage, the trench drain that I put in is for, regular stormwater, has nothing to do with
Yeah.
floodplain issues. There'll
Okay.
be no draining the ocean.
The other thing I wanted to mention, I can never resist bringing this up when someone from Old Mill Point comes in here, and that's the amount of fertilizer that's put on the lawns in that development in there. It's horrible. I mean, I think there are very few areas in town that have such a persistent area of lawns that are just pure. I mean, there's no fertilizer, there's no weeds in them. They're all
Monoculture.
green. I wish the association, if there is an association in there, at least educate their residents on what that's doing to the Nantucket Sound. I mean, it's contributing immensely to, we have no eelgrass left there, because that's all been killed off because of the nitrogen load that's created, both from sewers, I agree. I understand, that's a big contributor, but also from nitrogen, from fertilizers. And
I think the education, just needs to keep being pushed to the citizens and to the landscaping companies, just pointing out, that there is a negative
Yeah.
consequence to.
I don't know
perfect
how to
lawn.
do that, unfortunately. I mean, we bring it up as often as we can, and what's in forums like this, that I'd like to make it a public comment on it. But it's just, has a devastating effect, looks great, everybody's trying to keep up with the neighbors and everything else, but it's horrible.
I think that there, and I think that Amy can say to it, but there are certainly new products coming out to give a similar look with the new product.
And I do know the association there, and I've worked with them mostly on coastal projects. I'm happy to send another letter, and again, for this particular owner, I'm happy to make recommendations to you on things that maybe people could be doing a little better, because a
Yeah.
lot of time, it's just people just don't know. So,
We went to another property on Riverside today, it was on Riverside, correct, yeah. And
We're gonna
made a
talk
comment,
about-
similar comment about the lawns there, and the landscape developer that takes care of that property was there. She doesn't use any fertilizer at all. She uses iron on the lawn, she said, she has a lot of compost that she puts down on it and everything else. And it looked as good as any of the lawns in Old Mill Point. So there are ways to do it, but I don't think that message has really sunk in with a lot of the property owners that we talk to.
Maybe Tom's already doing it.
Maybe he is.
Might
I
be
could only
Tom.
hope. I could only hope, and if so, then pass the message along. But with that, can we have a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve the RDA for 8 Seaway, map 2, parcel A1-64 with a -2 determination.
Can we have a second, please?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Okay, thank you very much.
thank you.
The next item on the agenda is a request to amend an order of conditions for 15 Dune Road, map 13, parcel E3-1.
Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
Evening.
If you will, for the record, state your names and
Paul Vassal of 20 Snowland Road.
Craig Nichols, the new owner of 15 Dome.
Welcome.
Thank you.
Would you like to explain the project or what the issue is that we have before us?
Certainly. So I built 15 Dome Road over the course of the last 10 months or so, working with conservation and Moran Engineering. When the Nichols came under agreement on the property, they requested a outdoor fireplace. We came to the commission, and that was approved several months ago. We had an agreement to have it installed while I was still building the house. We didn't close until last week. So as the patio was being put in, the installer changed the sides to make it a half circle, basically. It was shaped like a piece of toast before. Nothing has changed. I just want the board to know on the depth of the fireplace from the house to 24 feet. But it did come out in a half circle, and we're over by 196 square feet. I called it 200, so I made the suggestion or the offer to Amy and Melissa to mitigate that by 400 square feet more of natural plantings. And there's a great area slope for it, which Dan should have demarcated on the plot plan. So we're asking the board to consider that. This was a mistake, we admit that, but we're hoping that this mitigation can help.
Okay, good, thank you. Amy, any comments?
Yep, it came to our attention at a site inspection that this was bigger and shaped differently than what was approved. Had this come in front of the Conservation Commission initially like this, I think it would have been approved. So I had made the recommendation to Paul at the time that they mitigate for it by doing the 2-to-1 ratio, and that slope seemed like the natural place to do it, and the new owner agreed. So what they're proposing is to use similar species that was along the limit of work line previously, which was viburnums, sweet pepper bush, chokeberry, sumacs, and spice bush, which would all be applicable for that case. However, I mean, it's not a couple square feet, it was a pretty large increase, and I know that ownership went from one person to the next, and there was a landscaper involved, so, the landscaper, the owners and the landscapers, I'm not trying to like come down hard, but everybody should know what the rules and regulations are. You had a clear order of conditions, with a clear site plan. A contractor who can't follow a site plan to correctly install a patio is concerning, to be off by that much without review. So I do think that the landscaper is equally as responsible for this. And then we did notice that, so according to your order of conditions, no fertilizers or herbicides are to be used within 100 foot of the buffer. Also, any grass, any lawn within the 100-foot buffer, which kind of bisects your house, is supposed to be a native grass mix. And it does look like up until the top of that slope that it is sod and that it has been fertilized. So maybe there was some mistake about where that lawn was, or where that line was, but it's pretty clear on the site plan. So that's also something for the commission to consider, that it looks like there might be some of those activities that have taken place that maybe we can correct going forward.
So if I can just say one thing, it was clear to me and to the landscaper of where that line is. I don't disagree. The sod may have continued, but I've been well aware that we had to follow the 100-foot rule, and I will continue to do that. So, and it looks very good because it's high-quality lumen, sod, and just recently put down.
Yeah,
But it is the fast tech though, definitely.
I don't know what that is.
I'm using the wrong term, I'm sorry, Amy. The grass we're supposed to use inside the 100-foot setback.
We don't allow turf or sod. It's supposed to be a native grass seed mix.
That's what I was told by the landscaper, that is the native grass, and it's different than even the front lawn.
Yeah, there were two different types of sod that were delivered. And my understanding as well, the second sod at that line of demarcation was the different sod, the native grass.
I mean, I'd love to see the specs on it.
Yeah,
Whenever
no,
you get a chance to email,
absolutely,
send that over, but
But is the concern that it's sod versus,
not so much. I mean, yes, my bigger concern would just be in the future, just abiding by the regulation of the no chemical, or no fertilizers, and that includes organic fertilizers, within the 100-foot buffer, because you are in the watershed to Allen Harbor there. So the only thing is that if the sod starts to deteriorate a little bit in terms of its virility, if you will, that you would probably overseed that with a native seed mix and not put down new sod. That's my personal take on it.
And I would agree, I would agree.
thank you.
But we can work those things out. I mean, there is a possibility of small fine, for especially the larger patio. The commission can discuss that, but I do see with what they've proposed that, I would recommend approval of the larger patio with the additional plantings.
Thank you. Ellen, do you have any comments? Okay.
No comments.
Randall?
I would agree with what's been proposed, and I would suggest that I'm in support of a fine for the patio increase for the property owner as well as the landscaper, and a warning for the sod situation.
Okay, John?
So are you maintaining that you have not applied any chemical applications to, or I should say, that no application of fertilizers, herbicides, or insecticides have been applied at all to that lawn since construction, within the 100-foot buffer? Is that the statement you're making?
Yes, we have fertilized in the front. That was within what the limit was.
Yeah, okay, we don't have well, I don't know.
We don't have jurisdiction in the front of the property.
Riverine, 200 feet is,
It's not on this lot, actually, because the
Okay.
stream itself is so small at this point, it's farther out, so the 200-foot does not come into play here.
okay. All right. I would also be interested in seeing the spec for the sod that is within the 100 feet. So if there's a way we can,
I can get that, I can get that.
That'd be great.
okay.
Amy, was there any language regarding permeability of the original patio in the order of conditions?
Hang on. It's not in the order, but it might have been on the plan. Give me 1 minute.
If I may, I know it's somewhere because we had to do pervious, materials for the patio, so we did do that.
Is it, oh, we talked about it on site. It was,
Sand.
sand, but it was I mean, the day I saw it was kind of condensed because it had gotten a little wet, but it's sand.
I know what's there.
Yeah.
What I'm asking
We
is-
didn't condition it. It's
Was
not in the order.
Okay. Is there a concrete base under that whole patio, or just
No,
just where the fireplace is?
just where the fireplace is, and actually, under the bar, that strip
Yeah.
where the grill is, that's concrete. But other than that, the rest of it is not. It's compact materials.
And I remember seeing that before it was finished, and that's the case.
Okay. Nope, that's all I had. That was my question.
I guess my question, Brad, you mentioned that you would be in favor of a fine against the property owner, the current property owner, or the one at the time this was constructed?
I think whoever held
Assuming it's different.
whoever held the order of condition.
That would be me.
All right. And the landscaper?
And the landscaper who constructed the patio. And
Okay.
do you want to wait until we have the sod confirmation, or can we move ahead tonight?
My suggestion, maybe think this is a light touch, so we send a warning about the sod and a warning about the fertilizer. He's saying he didn't do it within the 100-foot buffer. I'd say it's the first time, let's give you the benefit of the doubt, but fine $300 for the patio to the owner or Mr. Vassal, and the landscaping company. Because they really should have followed the
Yeah,
plan.
I would agree. And if we document fertilizer use in the future,
Yeah,
then it's not
but we'll
our
send the
decision.
warning.
Yeah. Would you like a motion to that
Yes,
end?
please.
Okay. I move we approve the request to amend the order of condition for 15 Dome Road, map 13, parcel E3-1, to mitigate for the increased patio construction over what was permitted in the original order of condition, at approximately 200 square feet, with the plantings discussed and to be approved by the conservation agent. And then I also include fines for the patio construction for both the holder of the order of condition as well as the landscaping company that constructed the patio.
Thank you.
I'll second.
Seconded? All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Okay. Motion is passed.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Gentlemen.
Can I just get clarification on the fine? I heard 300, but is it times 2 or?
Yes, both parties.
Okay.
Yep.
Be one to the owner and one to the landscaping company. How you deal with it is up to you.
Understood. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next item on the agenda is a request to extend and amend an order of conditions for 99 Riverside Drive, map 4, parcel A3-A1. Good evening.
Okay, if I take my mask off.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm Shane Watson with Bedworks Design. I represent Jeff Lang and Sandy Whitecroft, his wife, of 99 Riverside Drive. Pleasure to be here. I met a few of you today. This is our 20th year in business, Bedworks. I've never been before the Harwich board, but many times before Chatham and Orleans, so it's a pleasure. We've made great strides over at 99 Riverside Drive. The occupancy permit was issued about a month ago. We've installed the dry well to decrease runoff into the river. We've eradicated a good number of the invasives on the coastal bank, on the river bank. But since time has passed and Jeff and Sandy are now there, and there's quite a few trees that pose some risk to both the slope going to the river and also to the house itself because of the way they're leaning, close proximity to the house. I'll start with the north side of, which is on your map, is Area 1. There are two oak trees in there that need significant limbing up. I'm not sure if all of you had a chance to go there, but that portion of the coastal bank is eroding quite a bit. And I think it's imperative that those get limbed up and loosen the load on that bank and decrease the shade so that we can actually get more plantings in there to hold that slope. We need more sun to achieve that. And we have proposed to add additional plantings in addition to the ones we did originally with the notice of intent. And hopefully that will do the trick. So that's the pruning part. And then as you move southward of the boathouse, which is Area 2, there are 2 large oaks there that are severely compromised. And those are the ones closer to the house from the Gale wasp and other species. They're rotted at the bottom. And there are spruces intermixed into one of the oaks that are suffering as well and combined with those. So that's that group there. It's a group of 4 altogether. And we would flush cut there. No machines. And then below them is a pitch pine that was being destroyed by the turpentine beetle when we first took a look at it in the spring, but is now dead. So that needs to be removed. And again, in those areas, we propose significant plantings to help restore that bank and keep it intact. And then as you move further down, closer to the back of the house, there are 2 pines that are leaning towards the house, and they're large. It's nerve-wracking even to think about taking them down. Bartlett tree is not real excited about that. It'll be an extensive job to just even get them down without injuring the house. And then as you go further down, there are a few other oaks that we've tagged to let go, and largely to let the next generation of forest that's there come around. It's densely packed with oaks, and you kind of need to we need to choose who's gonna make it. There is no sun coming in there. We've eradicated most of the English ivy there, and now need to replant, but we don't have enough sun. So those are the last of the trees to remove on that corner there. And then the extension for 2 years to allow time for the plantings to take and to get certificate of compliance. With COVID, it was, the project took a lot longer than we had imagined. And then the last thing that we need to do is install the grass strip in the driveway in the center part, but we wouldn't have done that until construction was completely done at the house. It would have been destroyed trying to seed it. So I'm open to any questions or concerns.
Thank you.
So again, they're asking for 2 things. They're asking for an extension permit for 2 years, and that's primarily to help get the plantings established. The original order of conditions was in addition to the house, which you just got your occupancy permit for recently, so it's, that hasn't been done long at all, just finished. So in the progress they've made on the invasive removal and bank restoration is invasives have largely been removed there. We were talking on site that there is still some English ivy, which I think you're always gonna have, to have to take care of and, when it pops up, but you got most of it. And that area is now ready, really ready for planting. So I do see your concern about some of the hazard trees. I think that the trees that you're to be pruned north of the boathouse, those are, again, just pruned, not removal. Those are currently shading the edge of the marsh, and I think the proper pruning and balancing of those trees will add more stability as well as add more light to the marsh and get that to grow better in that corner. Then the other trees, I met out with Shane and Bartlett Tree as well, and they pointed out, the diseases that the trees have, and I do think that they are candidates for removal. There's other trees on the banking, which would be proposed to remain. And I think that right now the bank lacks any type of understory in the area where they had removed the English ivy. So the addition of the plants that they've proposed will provide additional habitat and stability and things like that. And I had noted that I was a little bit unsure about the creeping juniper on the north side of the boathouse, but I do think, I did a little bit more research, and I do think that we approved that prior, and and you're proposing more of that now. So I do think that will hold the bank on that side. So I would recommend approval of the 2-year extension, as well as the amendment.
Okay, thank you. Alan, any questions?
No comments?
No comments.
Riley?
I agree with the extension request. I guess I just want to touch base on how things are going. A concern we had with the original hearings was sometimes these projects can lead to encroachment of the coastal bank. Everyone wants to clean out the invasives, but sometimes it allows more activities and more encroachment on the coastal bank, and it's something we like to avoid by allowing things to grow back with natural shrubs. How are things looking nowadays? You haven't really had your time to have things grow, but how do things look
They
right
actually
now?
look good. I was, there today, and the dune grass has increased exponentially on the south side of the boathouse, so that's really promising. The north side of the boathouse is of concern to me. I think it's imperative that we get more sunlight in there and put those plants in as soon as possible.
Yeah.
We only plan to do 2 more treatments of herbicide for the ivy, one this month and one in December, and then we'll stop that completely so that there's no residual herbicide in there when we go to plant in early March, probably late February, early March.
Yeah.
But it looks good, and it's ready for planting. It's the right time.
Yeah.
And then with the trees having come to light, we sort of waited to plant until this was, we asked for your approval to eliminate those.
Yeah.
Because it's significant, and taking those down will cause significant unrest to what we would have tried to plant.
So Area 1, how do you expect that to look, say, 2 years from now? Is it going to have a real dense shrub cover?
Yes, we added significant amount there. I think the Clethra alnifolia will really be the best, our best defender over there. We will add more dune grass as well to the actual lower marsh side. We've also, or I think we added, I'll just take a quick look, I have a pretty good memory. But so the Clethra we added, and I did add larger shrubs as well. Sort of, usually it's like tree for tree, right? When you take a tree out, you want to put other trees in. But there's such a dense younger forest there that it didn't seem the right thing for the area. So I did add winterberry, viburnum, some taller things to sort of make up for those elimination of the trees. But I do think in 2 years we should have, I will make sure
Yeah, that's the
that
plan.
it's restored.
That's the plan. And
Yeah.
that's where the creeping juniper will go in Area 1.
Yes,
Yeah.
yep. It's actually not quite Area 1, it's sort of the steps down to the boathouse where the juniper will go. That's actually a separate area on your map. It's in that area, but it's not part of like what the original person who did the notice of intent called Area 1 and those part. It's a separate thing.
Okay.
And I did add an additional 3 there, so there'll be 5 there. But I think in particular, those oaks need to be limbed to allow for sunlight, because juniper won't take without it. Yeah,
Okay, thank you.
you're welcome.
Good to get an update.
Yeah, me too.
So I have a couple questions. One is about the lawn, and we talked about that on site today.
Yes.
But the thing I didn't really ask you and didn't get an answer to is, I understand what you're doing, the lawn on the higher elevation, it's all nice and green.
Sure.
But then the lawn surrounding the area where the, whatever it is, the storm drain is
Yes.
down, doesn't look all that great.
No.
And is that, are you intending to do anything about that? And if there isn't a healthy growth of something there, isn't it still at risk of washing out?
Absolutely.
Since it's down the hill, are you planning to
Yes,
fill that in with?
no, absolutely, that is, that took longer to establish, and construction was so delayed that was the last thing that we were able to do. We had to remove the silt fence that was there for limit of work, and do the grading there and put the dry well in. The mitigation plants, one of the mitigation areas is in that lawn, actually. So when that gets installed, some of that lawn will get eliminated. And we will address and fortify that lawn area. There was a lot of sand, there needs to be more compost put in there. It was just a tougher area, as you know, when you establish a lawn.
So the 2-year plan is that will be an established lawn similar to the one up the hill?
Hopefully, but part of it will be the mitigation planting too, so some of that lawn will be eradicated as well.
Okay.
We
that's
put in the native grass seed there to help hold it while we were finishing construction. But some of it will get removed to put the mitigation plantings in instead.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
Welcome.
No, I really do, I can't add anything, but I think it's pretty well thought out overall, thank you.
Thank you.
The only comment I have is, I know when we were there today, Mr. Lang, you mentioned that when you saw salt marsh floating down the river, you'd grab it and try to put it on the bank, in the marsh area.
I didn't tell him to do that.
Oh, well, that was my question, I guess. If you've got all this work going on to remove invasives and replant along the bank, do you feel the salt marsh would benefit from additional plantings in there? Salt marsh pillows or something to help restore that?
I would have said yes, definitely 3 years ago, but I've been amazed this summer, without doing the trimming, how much it's been growing in itself on the north side. You know, it's probably grown back at least a third of the sand opening that was there, just without doing anything. So I'm encouraged that if we get the trees trimmed back and get more sunlight in that spot, that we might find it comes back in on without us having to even get down on there and do anything. So,
Okay. Well, I guess that sort of answers my question. So, rather than trying to help it out with additional plantings, you're assuming that the trimming will provide more light down into that area and
Let it
it'll
grow.
restore itself. Okay.
if it had been going the other direction, where it kept widening in that little beach area, then I would be saying a different story.
Okay, great.
But, because that's been a concern of mine anyhow, especially with where any wakes and stuff can hit back in at high tide and do further damage undercutting the bank.
Yeah,
But
yeah, because that fills in, then that'll mitigate a lot of that, right?
I'm hoping.
Yeah. Okay, good.
Yeah, we might be back, we'll see.
Fair enough.
Hopefully not.
Fair enough. There being any comments from the audience? Attendees? Can we have a motion on this?
Just remember it's for 2 things. It's the extension and the amendment.
right, well, I'll make a motion to approve the notice of intent for 123 Riverside Drive, map 4, parcel A1, A10. No, I'm on the wrong one. I withdraw that. Wait a minute.
Extension and amendment.
Yeah, sorry. I'll make a motion, I knew I didn't want to do that. I'll make a motion to approve the extension and the amendment of the order of conditions for 99 Riverside Drive, map 4, parcel A3-A1, to extend the order of conditions for 2 years and amend the order of conditions for 2 years for required restoration and mitigation plantings.
And I'll second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Were we as easy as Chatham?
I'm sorry?
Were we as easy as Chatham?
That's a tough question.
Oh, I no comment.
That's the right answer, I think.
That's right.
Oh, no, that's just a formality.
They are,
That's just the paperwork. We don't need you.
Nice to meet you all.
No, we don't need you. Thanks. Thank you.
Next item on the agenda, notice of intent for 123 Riverside Drive, map 4, parcel A1, for proposed pool, outbuilding, patio, and landscaping. This is a continuation of the prior meeting that we've had.
Do you want me to? Oh, sorry.
Why don't you explain what,
Amy and I, as you know, we kind of all came to agreement in the last meeting with some requested changes. We worked with Amy, made the requested changes, and I believe they're off on the plan in front of you guys.
So, recap?
refresh us? Yeah.
Sure. So at the last meeting, the commission basically wanted to see a little bit more of the mitigation plantings because Kerry had provided enough restoration area to make up for the area that was impacted originally without permit. But in terms of mitigation to offset the proposed new structure, there was a shortage there. There was still, without what he's proposed now, there was still more natural area, or what would be natural area in the future than pre-existed there. So what you have in front of you at the meeting, let me backtrack, at the meeting, the Conservation Commission seemed to direct him that you would be amenable to on-site restoration for the additional, I don't know how many square feet,
About 1,500.
1,574 square feet,
We
right.
continue north on the property.
Right, that you'd be amenable to it as on-site mitigation, but just outside the 200-foot riverfront area. But essentially, it would be taking up area that would have been lawn. So that is what they're proposing.
It was actually changing plantings that weren't
Oh,
part of.
sorry.
It was changing plantings that weren't part of the
The mitigation.
mitigation to plantings that were mitigation.
They were more ornamental prior. So essentially, now you have the equivalent of the area that was disturbed is going to be restored, as well as 2-to-1 mitigation for the proposed hardscape within the 200-foot buffer. So that would be for the patio, the pool, the cabana, et cetera. So, it seemed like that was the direction that most of the commission was leaning, so that's what I tried to assist with, and that's what they did. So with those changes, I can recommend approval of the project. If you have any more questions, let me know.
Thank you, thank you. Mark, do you want to start us off? Any questions you have?
No, I really don't.
John, comments?
No comments or questions?
Brad, any comments?
No, I support what Amy worked out on this. It's good approach.
Yeah.
No questions.
Nothing, no comment.
May I make a quick note? Mr. Sullivan did pay the fine that was issued, so that's taken care of.
Thank you very much. Good. Any comments from the audience?
I guess I have one question,
Sure.
but don't interrupt. There was discussion of irrigation system. Can you describe where it would go in relation to the back or side yard? It wasn't clear.
It's all outside of the 100.
Okay,
Yeah.
gotcha. All right, good, thank you.
Sorry, can you clear, outside of well, you have the 100 to the riverfront, and then you have the 200 to the riverfront. It's outside the 100 to the riverfront, but it's only going to be in the restoration area. That's just gonna be drip irrigation, I believe, and it's just what's like your lawn.
That's it.
That's gonna be actual permanent irrigation.
On the front of the house.
No, that would be in the back.
So there's some on there's
There-
a small
where the
grass
pool-
area in the background.
near the pool.
Right in the bottom.
Just
Oh,
where,
I'm sorry, yeah.
just where the grassy areas are.
Side 100.
Okay. And that's all right in the riverfront area still?
It's outside the inner riparian, which is 100, so riverfront doesn't say anything about that. I would just, happily make some recommendations on products that wouldn't require any, fertilizers, as you've heard about us talk about a lot lately.
I got the-
So, but happy to make some recommendations on products that don't require that for your little lawn area you do
I've
have.
heard people saying, or before, using compost. That's what I use at my house now, and it works.
Whatever that young lady did at that other property was incredible.
I use compost on a lot of our jobs, and it works
Yeah.
great.
Yeah.
You
You
know, you
have a
plug it
company.
each year, and you re-compost in, and
Yeah.
that's all you need to do. But
Well,
I'd just like to insert a comment here, because I don't know what compost is. I mean, I know what compost is, but it could be a high nitrogen sort of thing, or a low
Right.
nitrogen thing. We don't have a position, and we don't have language on that. So, I'm not arguing about this case, but I think it's something we have to talk about and become more concrete about.
Yeah, because we have had discussions about organic versus non-organic, and things like compost, because they have nutrients in them, so. But yeah,
think it's
that's
something we should-
a larger discussion for the group
That's
as a whole.
for discussion some
not-
other
Not
time.
necessarily you.
we won't drag you down with that one.
Any structure to the monitoring, the plantings monitoring reporting, has that been discussed yet?
I believe, because the commission, it seemed like you were gonna be ready to make a vote, I did draft an order for you. And my suggestion for monitoring, I think, was a two-time annual, twice annually report for the first year, and then a one-time annual report detailing, the status of the plantings, how they're doing, things like that, whether you had to replant. So I would have, the way I wrote it, let's see. The restoration and mitigation plantings are to be installed either the same or next growing season as the start of the hardscape in the 200-foot riverfront area, because the two areas are separate from each other. I think you could do them simultaneously.
we plan to plant it all in the spring.
Yeah. So I know you're starting your hardscape as soon as you possibly can, so spring would be next.
2 years after
Two-
spring planting?
Well, it would be the 2 times the first year.
Yeah.
So probably after you did your planting, and then in the fall, late fall, and then the next year would be again in the fall, and then one more year, so. It is detailed in here.
If there are no other questions, can we have a motion on this, please?
Go ahead and move that we approve the notice of intent for 123 Riverside Drive, map 4, parcel A1-A10, with the conditions discussed and the planting schedule as shown in the plan, and the planting monitoring reporting as just described by Amy.
I'll second that.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you.
Thank you.
Next item on the agenda is 48 North Road, notice of intent for 48 North Road for a proposed bulkhead and fiber rolls.
Evening, Commissioners. Hope your autumn is looking fruitful. My name, for the record, is Lindsay Strode with Cape Organics. Dan Croto from Marine Engineering, and the applicants, Mr. and Mrs. Doyle, are in the audience. So just a little bit of history on the site. We'll go back probably a century, and it was a general store, the house, the dwelling across the street, general store, post office. At some point during that time, it burned, and a good portion of that material was pushed over the edge into the river. So there's a indeterminate amount of deconsolidated material in that area. So we'll jump forward maybe 100 years and talk in decades. Back in '07, at the advice of the commission, we did a soft solution. Soft solution worked well for probably about 10 years. The past 4 or 5 years, it's been rapidly degrading. And we got our initial money's worth out of it, but we are at a point now where something needs to be done that has a little more meat to it and gives us some longevity. Present conditions, I'm sure you folks are familiar with the area, but present conditions of the Herring River on that bend, the channel is tightening, and it's due largely to the shoaling. We have some pictures somewhere and a video that I brought somewhere, but there is significant shoaling that's pushing the thread of that channel further westward. And in doing so, it's making an impact on not only the bulk, the fiber rolls, but then the material ultimately behind that. And that's due largely to, across the river to the east, there's a large coastal bank, deconsolidated coastal bank, dropping a lot of material into the river, and it's ending up right on that shoal. At the apex, again, tightening the thread, increasing the hydrologic pressure right along that side. Ultimately, at some point, the eastern point of that shoal would break through, and a new thread of the channel would be more straight and consistent, but we don't know when that is, and it's ultimately gonna be up to Mother Nature to make that decision, but we're tasked with doing things in our timeline to try and manage the area and protect the land and ultimately the road right there. What we would like to do is put in a bulkhead, a vinyl bulkhead faced with some southern yellow pine. So it looks like a naval wall similar to the one to the north. And if you look at the plan, you'll see that the top of the wall is actually about 1.5 feet lower than the top of the coastal bank. We did that for a primary reason is during storm events, there would be possibility of deposition and natural processes allowed in that area, with the understanding that after significant storm events, we have the ability to go back in and nourish and stabilize as necessary. We typically would call that a sacrificial area, just again, to maintain the ecological process that has been ongoing in that area for a while. And that's the way we designed the fiber rolls as well. We didn't put them as a wall completely up the bank. We allowed overtopping at times. What we would do is to take fiber rolls and do two things. We'd put together a bench in front to try and maintain what we had created. There never was a marsh in front of that area, but we made one back in '07. It's still there, it's still functioning, but there was never one there prior to our initial efforts with soft solutions. That would do two things. It would slow the impact, the hydrologic impact along the wall, lessening the transfer of energy. At the same time, we take fiber rolls and wrap them around the ends of the wall in concert with taking the wall and blending that into, I call it dying into slope, and make it come back landward. So again, we lessen the impact and lessen the opportunity for flanking that would occur. You know, so that's where we're at. If we have our say, I think it's a good project. It'll benefit not only the client, but ecologically, it'll maintain the function of that area consistently for quite a while. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you.
I would just add that it's, that the owners have been maintaining this area, and that them together with the bulkhead to the north are what's stopping the erosion into North Road, and then the town would have to take over. At the closest spot, it looks like it's about 17 or 18 feet right now, the top of bank to the paved North Road. So by the owners doing their work, it's saving the town from needing to do their own major project when it erodes in another 10 or 15 feet. And I think the DEP did issue a license for the work that Lindsay had done in 2007, and their thinking, I'm sure, was that this was a good spot to halt the river. I'll just leave it at that.
Thank you.
Sure. We do not have a DP file number for this from the state, so without that, we can't move on the project tonight. But I think the commission, we have a few questions anyways prior. Also, I got an email from Division of Marine Fisheries, but it was very informal. We usually get a letter. So I think that they were just hurrying to try to get us something prior to the meeting. But I think we would now ask for their typical, even if, and they had said they don't see any adverse impact for marine fisheries things, but, you know, actually their formal letter would be helpful to have. So this area, as Dan and Lindsay stated, they have had a fiber roll array that was permitted by the commission back in '07. They've done some maintenance to it. If you've been out to the site, you can still see some filter fabric. You can see the old stakes, but things have essentially really deteriorated out there, and there is erosion. The river is wanting to move in this direction. There is a bend across the river from this that is growing into the river, and the river is wanting to move in this direction. So the Doyles did what they were told to do and tried a soft solution first, and now they are asking, 15 years later, for a harder solution. Their house is across the street from here. The way the DEP regulations read is that it's to protect a pre-78 dwelling. However, this is more protection of obviously your platform, but also the road by doing this here. So my couple of things. With the current design in front of us right now, my recommendation is, I know that you said in your proposal that you want the navy piles as well as the wood veneer or whatever of the wall to have that aesthetic wood look, and that it was purely for aesthetics, that you don't need the navy piles for stability. I would just state that that's additional structure in an actual resource area that's not necessary, and while I understand you wanting to have a certain look to it, that's really not in our purview if we can minimize disturbance and structure in a resource area. So my first recommendation to you is not to allow the navy piles on the exterior, on the water side of the bulkhead. Something else we did talk about a little bit on site today when we did our quick site visit is how would this proposed project potentially have an impact to adjacent areas? And it seemed like the concern was more so on the outgoing tide, that on the north side of this proposal, you might see exacerbated erosion on the outgoing tide along the north side. And that's the area that gets close-ish, closest to the road up on that area. So what the commission mentioned on site is, Ginny, I know that, remember seeing Mr. Greg Berman out there with myself. Of course, at the time, he didn't have a formal proposal, but we'd like to, I think it's wise to get he's a coastal processing specialist, he's a geologist, have him formally weigh in on this. I think we need a little bit more of assurance that there's not gonna be exacerbated scour as a result of the proposal, particularly on the north side. Again, I'm not opposed to the project, just wanna do a little bit more due diligence to just ensure we don't exacerbate erosion on that north end. And I'm sure the owners don't wanna see that either, so. Seeing as how we can't close out tonight anyways, I would just recommend that we get Greg or another third party, just to take a look at this before we vote.
Okay, thank you. Mark, do you have any comments?
Not yet.
Okay. John?
Yeah, so, just looking at the site, I did notice, I think it was pretty obvious at the north end, it's not really on the Doyle's property there, there's HCT property there too, and I think it's just the north side there where it butts up against the next property. There's a sort of sandy beach with some marsh grass growing in there, and I'm just wondering whether some of that sand is actually sand that came off the bank that you're now proposing to protect. And again, I don't know whether that's positive or negative. I'm wondering whether putting in the bulkhead would end up sacrificing some of that sand to the north end, which is sort of what Amy was talking about. But my other question is about the piles that are proposed, and the statement is they're not structurally necessary. I'm just wondering again what the effect of those piles would be on any existing vegetation, whether or not that would be a positive or a negative for existing vegetation in front of that area, some of the salt marsh grass that's growing there, whether they would serve to create more turmoil in the water in front of them, or whether it would slow the water down and make it easier on the salt, on the marsh grass that's growing there. So that's a question. I think those are things that are in support of getting Greg or somebody out there to have a look, and because it's really hard for us to look at that and make informed.
If you want somebody in
Judgment.
addition to or else other than Greg, let me know. We can talk about that.
That's all I have.
Thanks. Brad?
Yeah, I'm gonna ask Amy to run through what DEP's looking for this type of a structure, this type of location. You know, they can be used to protect a pre-existing structure built before 1978. Isn't there a foot setback as well?
It's 40 feet from a dwelling. It's not even, doesn't say structure.
Right.
It specifically says pre-78 dwelling.
Right.
However, DEP has been, they haven't been exactly by their book lately when it comes to that. I've seen them allow revetments where there's not a house, a pre-78 house within 40 feet. There's a association pathway. So DEP has received this. I have not gotten any comments from DEP about how it meets the Wetlands Protection Act or not.
A third party would be helpful for that. I think it could qualify because of the road.
I
as
would
well as
agree.
The initial attempt to use the soft solution.
Right.
So I
And they
think
did that, right?
Yeah, I'm not feeling like it's a non-starter, but I'm curious because it's a pretty important question.
Yes.
And what else? What are your thoughts on erosional impacts that are increased because of the structures north of here? You've got a bulkhead, then you've got a pretty heavy riprap just above here. any increase in velocity causing more problems here than you normally have? Any thoughts on that?
It's really interesting. I've been on this river since the late 80s,
Yeah.
and it's changed significantly, and moreover, the past 20 years on this location. I've worked for the people that owned previously, Mary Lou McGrath's house is the one that sits out actually in the river there. I know you guys have had some experience with that.
Yep.
But what's really interesting is on a good ebb tide, there's a current that comes around. It comes literally right underneath the float, and it's going to the south.
Mhm.
At the same time, there's another current that's actually going north, right along the area where the fiber rolls are. I mean, we saw that initially when we put things in, and we're seeing that now. And I think, I didn't take videos of it, 14 years ago, but I do have videos, and it's just astounding. It'd be interesting to see what, just as an aside, what the bathymetric, bottom contours are there to make this happen. It's really interesting. It seems as though it gets pushed right down to the south, Peat Marsh, and then it kind of bends back up, and it eddies and upwells going in the opposite direction, almost all the way back on, as far as it can, during low tide.
It deposits a lot of material right in the middle there, or towards the east side.
Correct.
There's a lot of material building up there. I've dove there a lot, drift diving for blue crabs. And it's a fascinating spot. You really pick up speed when you come around the corner heading south. And on the far side, I've actually got caught in a fallen pine tree. There's no idea it was there. All of a sudden, you're in a pine tree. And so there's a lot of velocity on that other side as it picks up.
And where that coastal bank is, Charlie Murphy's son-in-law used to come up and fish, and he did some soundings over there. It's like 30 feet deep, right there. He pulled a
Wow.
huge bass right out of that hole.
I wasn't gonna give too much information on bass fishing there, but yeah, that bend has a lot going on, so. All right, so this project, it could increase those velocities, I suppose, but again, I think the road eventually has to be protected, so that's kind of where I'm coming from, but it'll be good to see what a third party says about these questions.
So you're aware, DPW has looked at this over the past few months, and they're in favor of the project because of the road. But again, just want to make sure that north end, I think that's the most susceptible part, that the property and the road are protected.
The south end doesn't seem to have a lot of impacts.
There's more marsh there. It's more gradual
Yeah.
there. It's a lot more marsh over there.
Mhm.
Just to one point quickly, on that north end, this bulkhead, or the bulkhead doesn't go far enough, and you'll notice when you're standing on the float looking at the dock, this only goes probably, I think this is a 10 scale, 10 or 12 feet past the dock. There's still a significant area that's currently undermined, that we wouldn't touch, that would be allowed to naturally degrade. At the same time, as I initially mentioned, our bulkhead isn't high enough to prohibit sand from still being deposited, and again, given, ongoing conditions, we would look to maintain that to provide sediment sources for that beach or whatever other ecological processes are in the river.
Maintain that north end. If that did find to accrete in, then, say, road in, then hold the top of bank at that location if there is an issue.
And we've been maintaining this for, again, since it was put in, so it's not something we're just gonna walk away from. We realize this is a very dynamic location, and that's my biggest criticism with soft solutions is people use them as structures and they walk away. If you maintain them, they can last significantly for a long time, particularly consistent with flanking. And that's a good spot for soft solution and site-appropriate plantings, as long as somebody's there on a regular basis.
Have you seen a site like this get even a dozen years of having a fiber roll sustained with maintenance? We've heard 8 to 10,
I have a project in Chatham that has just dead on out of the northeast, and it comes between Strong Island and some other point that I'm not aware of. And we were able to, that's been in at least 12 years. But again, it was purposefully sloped, so we don't have that luxury here. It's purposely sloped, so the waves can run up and then pull material out. And we go back probably every other year and maintain it. And we've got ongoing conditions. As long as the fiber rolls are intact, we can maintain it. And we plan on doing that until I'm not around.
Yeah, it's not bad. Thank you.
Question?
I have no questions, but I do agree with Amy's recommendation to get a third party to look at it.
Yeah, yeah. No?
No questions.
The only questions I had when we were out there, we were looking in the water line, there's 2 lines of stakes. I assume the innermost one is for the fiber rolls you last put in. And then there's another line outside of that? Because I see you've got them marked here, it says existing stake lines from previous fiber roll work.
Right, so what we did is we created a bench. We used a 20-inch fiber roll, and again, there was more bottom here before, so we used the stakes to hold the fiber roll in place. We created the soil matrix, if you will, for the marsh grass. We tucked 1,000-gram matting underneath the landward fiber roll and created a bench. That bench we then planted, and that's, the planting you see there now is what we did initially in '07.
So both those rows of stakes were used for the prior
Correct.
fiber rolls?
Correct. And we
Okay.
did have some initial erosion issues on the seaward side of it. So when John Chatham was here, we got permission to go in and basically tuck in a 12-inch fiber roll kind of at the toe underneath to stabilize the bench so the plants could continue to grow.
Okay.
So that was another maintenance effort that had to go on.
Yeah, so those stakes and there's tiebacks associated with those too. I saw,
Correct.
like a steel tiebacks or something. That would all be removed?
They would be removed and replaced. The
Oh, that's right,
bulkhead.
because you'll be putting a second,
Right, we would just do fiber rolls right along the front and plant. We'd
Yep.
create that similar bench, but we can't go out as far as we did before because the bottom drops away.
yeah, okay. Okay, good. I have no other comments other than what Amy has suggested as far as getting Greg Berman in there. Something else, Amy?
Well, no, I just wanted to request, since you are the property owners, would it be okay if we did a formal site visit with Greg and had him just evaluate it again, just to make sure, it's not gonna exacerbate? Huh? I would set it up, but I would we would coordinate, because obviously if you wanna be there, Lindsay and Dan wanna be there, the commission can be there. I can coordinate that, though.
And another of our concerns is that as that water comes around the corner, there's I don't know how long that cement rock bank is that
Oh.
the Dudeks have,
Yeah.
that, that's been there for a long time.
Mm-hmm.
So that increases the rush of water. Then comes the next piece of
Yep.
land, which is a hard solution, wooden
Mm-hmm.
bank. It hits that, and then it comes and hits us
Mm-hmm.
with no protection.
Right.
Right.
So we're just hanging out there. We've lost like 10 feet of bank. 10 feet of bank in 10 years, but we tried to do the right thing with the coconut roll.
And you
Yeah,
did.
it
They
was
were
pretty
cool.
visible, just looking at the
I wanted you to be
stakes.
aware of that
Yeah.
in terms of our neighbors, that they did nothing wrong, I
No.
guess. But it causes a problem with the water.
Yep.
Right.
So we just want to make sure that between those factors, which are to your north, and if you were to do this, that the area between the northern part of what you're doing and now Mr. Smith's property,
Yeah.
that doesn't see, of course, it's still going to erode, but can we say that is this going to exacerbate anything? So we just want to do some due diligence.
Yeah, that's good.
So my recommendation, because we meet every 2 weeks, but there's not enough time to have a site visit and have Greg do a report if we were to be in 2 weeks. So my recommendation would be to continue this discussion to December 1st, which would be our, not next meeting, the one after. And that should give us time to see if Greg can come out and get a report, plus get the DEP number. Does that sound like a plan?
When would you do the work on this?
Assuming that we get an approval as soon as, again, I would say as soon as possible. I'd have to check with my contractors, but as soon as we could.
Before spring, though? Before spring, if possible, I assume, yeah.
Correct.
Do you need, though, you need a chapter 91?
I believe so.
I believe, yes.
That takes a long time. I mean, that's not our
We do the work when we get a chapter.
that is
91.
not our purview. We can't, I mean, so chapter 91 is the state waterways license, and we cannot, you know, that's what you're supposed to be doing. So we can't stop you. Once you have our permit, we can't stop you from doing the work, but you need to get a chapter 91
We
license.
generally wait for the chapter 91 before we vote on these,
No, we
don't we?
don't.
We don't
Nope.
need to?
No, they require us to vote prior to submittal to them.
Oh, wonderful, good. All right.
And, oh, just so you know, John Rendon, said this did not need to go to waterways, so.
I think that we know, as Brad was saying, and as Greg will point out, making sure that this doesn't need some type of revision to the plan to meet the requirements to get to chapter 91.
Yeah.
So we certainly know that things could change if
Mhm.
the state comes back and says this isn't eligible for chapter 91.
Okay. So, should we make a
Continue.
motion to pen this until when?
December
December
1st
1st.
would be the doable date, I think.
I'll move to continue to December 1st.
Second,
I'll second.
all in favor?
Aye.
Thank you very much.
Thank
I
you.
will reach out to Greg this week, and please send me an email if you're not gonna be around certain days. If you know that, then I'll avoid those.
History, I didn't know about the store.
Just go ahead, just do it.
Oh, I didn't want to go to that.
You shouldn't give me such power.
Mass in that river, I need to
Thank you very
strike
much.
that,
Yes, right there for the record.
especially with
Yes.
Thank you.
Alrighty. Boy,
Was Greg prior?
moving on.
I want something in writing.
Yes, a couple of orders with conditions.
No, he's the same type of person. Woods Hole Sea Grant and County Extension. He is Jim O'Connell,
I
but
recently started looking at
he's, right.
sounding equipment to do bathymetry and skin equipment. And I discovered this whole community of people who buy these fancy side scan sonars, which aren't that expensive.
Not at all.
And they map out these places and then they argue about whether they're gonna publish it or not, because they don't want other people to find out where the fish might be.
Bass fishing, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, they don't break the bank anymore. And you can have a GPS link, so you
Yeah,
produce
yeah.
electronic products, yeah.
Order of conditions, first one is for 2 Harwich Pines septic installation.
Yep.
Oh, right. Looks good to me.
Any comments,
I have no
questions,
comments on
changes?
that one.
I have no
No
changes to it. We have a motion to approve this.
I would
Make a
move-
motion to approve the order of conditions for 2 Harwich Pines then. Thank you. Mark, you can second it?
I'll second it.
Thanks, Katie. All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Next one is order of conditions for 86 Squantos Path for an extension of the existing deck, rinse station, landscaping, kayak rack, and replacement of stairs. I had no comments on this. Any other comments?
No, no comments.
I move we approve the order of conditions for 86 Squantos Path.
Second.
Second, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Passes. Next is the order of conditions for 397 Route 28, an amendment for an emergency building removal.
So it's just amended special conditions with a new plan date and a couple new conditions. You can't revisit their other ones.
The only question I had on this, Amy, I noticed it mentions the 786 square foot building, which was closest to the resource area. Does this cover that land, I mean, that large building that was against the road?
The previous one did.
Oh, so it's
The
already
original
taken care
order,
of?
the original order did, yep.
Okay, all right, good. In that case, I had no other comments on it.
No comments. I'll move to approve the amended order of conditions for 397 Route 28.
And a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
While we're doing orders of conditions, we can do it, because we actually could have done it when Harry Sullivan was up here, but, would you look at the draft orders that I had prepared for 123 Riverside Drive?
Sure. Do we have those in the file, or?
They were, yeah. You want me to, I can read through the specials if you want. It should have been,
Oh,
I don't see it here.
I don't see it.
not in draft
Sorry.
orders?
Yeah, they are there, 123 Riverside Drive, it's like in the fourth row of documents, the
Yeah.
first one.
There it is. I
What?
got it, yeah.
I see enough.
Yeah, the OC is there. I mean, do we have to do this tonight? I mean,
He was, I mean,
oh, he's looking at-
hoping, because he was hoping to
Yeah.
get the hardscape
Tonight.
started to get in. That's why I prepared, well, I had a feeling you were gonna approve it with some changes, with
Right.
the little, but
Well, give us just a minute.
take your time.
Yeah, just take a minute to read it.
I didn't get some more water.
Now, the question for you, though, this just has the 2-year survival rate. Is this the one that we wanted to have, like a 4-year monitoring period?
3-year monitoring period, but that the plans have to be in at least 2 years prior to a certificate of compliance. So what that means is, after 2 years, he could apply for a certificate of compliance, but he would still, as an ongoing condition, have to provide a monitoring report that 3rd year.
But I don't see that in here, Amy.
Native restoration and mitigation are to survive at least 2 years with a 90% survival rate.
I didn't even see the document. I don't know where the document is.
It's like second row.
Second row.
Hold on, let me look at,
Are you looking at mine?
What's the name of the document?
It's OOC, actually, yeah, second row, far right, 123 Riverside Draft OOC.
you're right, Ernie, I didn't have the monitoring in there, and I
Oh,
must have been
okay,
thinking
all
about
right.
it,
I'm
so.
sorry, I was
Okay.
blind, that's all.
You're correct.
You could modify that number, what is it? Number 11?
Yeah,
pretty
to include
easily,
it.
And I don't mind, if we go ahead and approve it, as long as you just modify 11 to include the reporting schedule.
I may just write a new condition, but I could do that too. So 2 times monitoring for year 1, 1 times annually for the next 2 years, and I'll put a date, what those are due by, and what those should include. But essentially, if he applies for a cert of compliance after his first 2 years, he can do that if things are looking good. But he would still be required that 3rd year to provide that last report.
And the only other comment I would have is fertilizer condition within that lawn area next to the pool.
Did I not put that either?
I thought I saw,
Any grass is to be
Oh,
native
number
grass
4,
units.
that's, number 4, but it's only for the 200-foot riverfront area.
That's correct.
Oh, so that would include that?
The
then?
pool, yeah.
Yeah.
that's a bonus.
Yeah, great.
We've
good.
been doing that lately for rivers, that's good, that's a lot.
So with that, I'd make a motion that we approve the order of conditions for 123 Riverside Drive with an addition to number 11, the special conditions to include the monitoring schedule.
Seconded.
Thank you.
All in favor?
Aye.
Motion
This
passed. Next, we have a request for an extension on 55 Sugar Hill Drive.
Yep.
Map 88, upgrade of an existing cesspool to a Title V septic.
I thought the applicant was going to be here, but I guess not, but he did provide some clarification. At the last meeting, we're saying, well, this has been active for a number of years now, where we stand with things. I think it was issued in 2013, so this was an existing cesspool to a Title V, but there was also a deck and addition. So I don't know why it got advertised, back in the day as only a cesspool to a septic, because it was more than that. Remodeling of the dwelling and replacing of the existing deck and retaining wall. So we had just asked for some clarification. One, how long of an extension do you want? He says just 1 year is all more he needs. He's got everything else lined up. Have the cesspools been replaced with the Title V? Yes. Have the deck and retaining wall been completed? Yes. To a retaining wall in 2015, and the retaining wall was done in 2015. The deck has not been done, so that deck is still to be done. Will the work on the foundation require additional digging or exterior work within jurisdiction? Yes. The new frost wall at the basement window will require excavation to a depth of 4 feet. Per my discussion with the contractor, he thought a small machine or aggressive hand digging would be required. New concrete sonotubes to support the deck. Also, he could use diamond piers to support the deck. So it's a small amount of digging, and he would only like an extension for 1 year. So the plantings he did the plantings, as mitigation required plantings years ago. I actually have that documented in my file. I didn't remember it because it was years ago. When he did the septic, he did the mitigation plantings, even though he hasn't done the work. So sounds like he's ready to go. Normally, I wouldn't recommend an extension for something this old, but I say we give him a year. And if he doesn't do it, then he's got a new filing. But it sounds like he's got everything lined up to do the work this year.
Okay. Any
And the
comments?
site looks good. I've been there, so.
Any comments, anyone? We have a motion to approve this?
I'll move to approve the request for an extension at 55 Sugar Hill Drive, map 88, parcel R49.
Any second?
Seconded?
All in favor?
Aye.
Good, motion passes. Extension passes. Thank you. Then we have 3 sets of minutes. I didn't find the August 18th set in the Dropbox, Amy?
That's probably not done yet. Sometimes we add things hoping they're gonna be done,
Okay.
and then, hey, but Melissa's doing great.
So we have 2 sets of
We
minutes.
have 2 sets of
then
minutes.
In Dropbox.
Wait a minute. I have no comments on either one.
I had no comments. Anybody?
No comments.
Which were the sets that are in Dropbox?
June 2nd and October 21st.
Okay, great.
Let's see, 11 a.m., this was a site visit.
October 21, that was the one we did out at
Yeah.
Wawatasi, right?
Not long ago. I would request that we identify our chair
In which set of minutes? On the onsite?
on the October 21st.
Saw that in there.
Yep,
I always like to see that.
yep.
I'm reading that last sentence on the first page. They respond, they did not contend there were no shellfish. Yeah, I guess he did say that. Right.
It was said, and then comments were made that made it sound like that point was being minimized, and so I made a comment in response to that. But
Right.
Yeah, I remember that. Yeah.
Right. I felt it was one of the better shellfish surveys we've seen.
Mm-hmm.
yet it still missed oysters. And some of that is just the way it goes, but they did document soft shell clams as well as any survey in a long time, I felt. Yeah, I have no comments on that one, I guess.
Just add Chairman Ernie Crabtree.
Sure.
All right. Can we have a motion on this then?
I move we approve the minutes for October 21st, 2021, and the June 2nd, 2021.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
I'm abstaining because I wasn't here for the June
For the
2nd
June.
meeting.
I was just gonna say the same thing, and I wasn't here for October 21st.
2 abstentions then. 4 in favor, 2 abstentions. Thank you. So we're into our discussion and possible vote on,
Yeah, a quick update on frag removal at the Bell's Neck. I reached out to 3 companies in the summertime and to get quotes about the removal of the frag that's growing up in the bogs in the Bell's Neck Conservation Area. And only one company got back to me, and that was Wilkinson Ecological Design. They came out to the site with me in early September. It's just taken them a long time to get me a quote, so they finally got me a quote. It would, because the frag is juvenile, it's not coming up in one mass. It's like one here, one here, one here, one here, and that makes it hard and more expensive to treat. So eventually it would completely fill in and choke out, like it does, the entire ecosystem. So I think the time to act is now, even though it is their projection, which includes spot treatment, so it'd be a cut and wipe treatment. We would have to do permitting in-house, which is fine. They could come and represent it, but that's the only way to take care of frag, unfortunately. But a cut and wipe treatment with follow-up treatments that they would do for 3 years, the cost would be about $13,000. But when you go out there, I didn't realize how extensive it was starting to already get. There's a small stand on the north section, and there's a couple of stands, and one very spread out, sporadic stand on the south section. It's not gonna get any cheaper to do this, and it will just completely take over the ecosystem. So, because it is more than $10,000, I have to do, the correct process for this, and officially solicit. I didn't officially solicit, I just asked for quotes, so I have to officially solicit quotes. And I'll bring those to you, but I personally think that this is a great use for our wetlands funds. We currently have over $50,000 in there, so we have the money to do it. And I think getting a jump on this before it gets worse is a good idea. So, I guess with your blessing, I will officially solicit, go out and officially request quotes. Put out a request to do that. Okay?
comments from anybody? Discussion?
I'm wondering what the potential holdups are in getting from a vote here to actually an RFP out there, or RFQ, or whatever it is. Is there likely to be a delay in getting the thing out?
As long, if I can have just a little guidance from downstairs about procurement, which I think I can get, I can do it. We've all had to take procurement training.
Oh, good.
Yes. So this, again, because it's above 10,000, so it is the public process, but it's not 50,000. We don't need to have an RFP and stuff like that.
Oh, just need 3 bids?
I just need to officially put out the request, yeah. So I'm hoping I can do that relatively quickly. With just a little guidance, I'm comfortable doing it.
What exactly is officially? What does that mean?
That's what I think I need to put it on, what's it, Combis?
Combines.
I need to put it on Combis, the request.
What's that?
Solicitation, solicit quotes essentially is what I have to do.
State bid.
It's a state bid.
So what's the difference between that and RFP?
You're asking the wrong girl, that's why I have to ask these I have to ask these questions.
Probably under a certain amount, you don't have to go to Congress.
There's a certain, so that's where I need, and I'm gonna sound ignorant here, and I don't mean to. There's a gray area between 10,000 and 50,000. And I was really hoping this project was gonna come out under 10,000. We could just accept it, you know, we could say, hey, we reached out to 3 companies and they came in at 9,000 and we're gonna take that one, but it didn't. So there's, I need to ask, let me get a little back to you, I don't wanna
And we
say
can't
something I'm not sure on.
do this in phases?
Can I ask?
You're not supposed to like parcel out that stuff anyways.
Okay.
Can I ask a question? Which part of the area of the bog are we talking about? The whole entire area, or just the southern part, or the northern part, the upper part?
It's in the upper, it's in the, when you drive in,
On the
it's in the
left?
bog immediately on the left. I did not see it at the far bog on the left. I did not see it up there. So it's, when you first come in, there's a small stand there, but then when you are on the right, it's not in the bog where the little bog where the pump house is. It's in the bigger
Yeah.
southern section. And that's where there's
Really
one
taken
or
off,
two
yeah.
clump that it's actually nice clumps, which makes it easier to manage. But all near the stream in there, it's very sporadic. And that's
Yeah,
what's
I was in there walking a couple of weeks ago and I saw that stuff in the south, and it wasn't just one little spot, it was,
No, it's everywhere. But like I said, it's kind of spread out.
Now, don't shoot the messenger, but can we just mow the whole bog off and then put it underwater for 6 months, let it open up again, take the water off, put the water back on? Because water will kill a lot of things, and if you've been working around bogs my whole life, if you can mow that whole thing off, put the water on it, keep it underwater for 6 months, you'll see the whole thing die. And then it'll come, whatever comes back, do it again. Have the DPW with a mower gravely, mow every section, and then just flood it.
What do you think about frag though? Because frag loves water.
I understand, but if you mow it down, put it underwater, I don't think it will grow up, will it? Through the water?
It is, it is emergent, meaning it can grow through.
Through the water?
If the water's fairly shallow, I mean, I'm not an go ahead, John.
well, we've done that in the Skinnickley herring run, and there is frag growing up in the herring run. It's always underwater there, and it's not as pervasive as in the boggy areas, you know, on either side, but there is frag growing in the mainstream of the herring run, which gets flooded. Well, it is flooded all the time to some depth, but it, you know, twice a day it gets flooded by salt water, and the frag's still growing there.
But the tide goes in and out? Does it go
Yeah.
in and out?
But it doesn't dry, it
Doesn't
doesn't
dry
go
out.
dry there, it never goes dry.
No, but if you keep this underwater at least a foot, you know, for 6 months. We did that on a bog one time, the whole thing turned black, and it was
Was
dead.
there frag on the bog?
No, but I'm just saying there's poison ivy and other bull briars and different things, but
I don't think a foot of, I mean, I would love for that to
Trying
be
to
an
save you
answer. We
money.
could- No, I know.
Well, here's the second thing too. We've got an approved approach on the table to selectively allow certain things to live and then selectively get rid of the invasives. So that's kind of what we're moving on right now. So that would be a departure to what we've approved.
It
Right.
could be, yeah, short-term damage, you know, killing some
Right.
things off.
how about burning it?
For-
Burn it?
It loves fire.
That's it.
Well, that's a bad thing.
It really
It's an
does.
evil plant.
It's an evil
Agent
plant,
Orange,
and it
yeah,
spreads.
Agent Orange, I guess.
So there's a lot of science that the seeds, it spreads a few different ways, but the tufts of seeds, that they only account for a very small percentage of the spread. It spreads rhizomally, and it can lie dormant for quite a while, too.
How'd it get in there? Through birds or something, droppings? Because it was never there before.
I know.
So,
it's
yeah,
come-
there is some spread from, you know, from the seeds that just blow.
Right, yeah, I understand, but it
Or
wasn't there
birds,
before.
yeah.
Must have been birds or something, right?
It could have been, and I did look too, because I thought I saw some in the West Reservoir, but it turned out to just be cattails disguising themselves, which is a good thing, but it did not come in from the West Reservoir.
Main Street bog has it too.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, very bad.
Seems to me it would be best to take care of it. I mean, I'm intrigued by the idea of doing that experiment. But the downside is, all you do is delay the treatment, and then you've got more to deal with a year from now, and that sounds like a really bad idea to me. Or
It's
2
grown, I
years
mean,
from
it's
now, whenever.
exponential how much it's grown in the past year or two.
I don't think it will ever go away,
Yeah.
even if you treat it, right? I mean, eventually, if it got there, something between now and then, somehow, it's gonna get there again, so.
Yeah.
I think it's gonna be an ongoing
It's
battle.
gonna be a maintenance thing.
If you look at Red River, the marsh, it's,
Yeah.
just off of Skinnequit. It was a small ball of a patch when I was a kid, that we used to play inside of it, and now it's like acres. It just extends. It's just, and you can't ever envision getting rid of it. There's so much of it right
Yeah.
now. But that was a very small patch, and the word was, I guess, in the 50s, it just started showing up in town and taking off.
It was another one of those ornamentals, is what it was.
Yeah,
Um, it's-
ornamental.
It was attractive, you know, people in the landscape, and then it just went wild.
Shame. So what do you need from us
I don't need
tonight?
any, I mean, I'm just gonna pursue going through the proper channels, and I'll let you know what those are when I have a clearer idea of what those are. I know a lot of good the procurement training did for me. I can't answer that question for you right now, but I will.
All right.
Okay?
And we have an item on changes to the draft Heartland Wetland Protection Bylaw.
I printed out both the draft, the one that we voted on, which still says October on it, because that was before we knew we weren't gonna make special town meeting. But I also printed out copies of the email, because Brad and Ernie did a presentation to the Board of Selectmen in late September. So after that meeting, the Board of Selectmen asked the Conservation Commission to consider a few things. It is gonna be on the warrant for 2022. They did not vote whether to support or not support it. But if you want, I emailed these to you, but if you want a copy of the emails that Brad and Ernie were sending back and forth, I have those. And I also have a few copies of the proposed warrant articles. Does anybody want any of those?
No, just to
I-
summarize,
Yeah, okay.
summarize the two issues that the selectmen were concerned about was whether or not the requirements, or the requirements for new docks, as far as spacing, height, and that sort of thing, would apply to existing docks if they ever had to be repaired. And the second thing was, there was comment that we have a May to October.
April to October.
April to October in-water period for docks, and they thought that was too restrictive, that, I mean, even today, you see a lot of boats that are still in the water. So they requested that we consider making some change, liberalization to the in-water period. So.
November. It seemed to be like they were more in favor of, instead of putting something in earlier, they were in favor of, you know, we have nice weather days, extending the season longer. So we typically say April 15th and to October 15th, but that could be, go ahead.
I thought it was May 15th to October 15th. Thought that was what,
Oh, maybe, and they were saying that's only 5 months in our regular, that's right. It says May 15, we say May 15 to October 15, but our regulations say 6 months out of the year, and that's only 5.
oh, so that's just
So,
plain inconsistency.
yep, so that's easily fixable, but I think the request was to let docks either stay in until either November 1st or November 15th.
Well, the current concern that I had with setting a time period is, do we enforce it? Do we monitor
Can't.
it?
I mean, I look and I'm like, oh, they don't have their dock out yet, you know,
Yeah,
there's just not enough
yeah.
hours in the day.
So,
I don't think it's a big issue for us. I think we want to enforce storage
Yeah.
right,
components, but, you know, I don't think.
Whether or not it's in or not,
Yeah.
that's more of like on them, because if there's ice damage, but,
Yeah, we don't want, in the spring, we wouldn't want to see any of the growing period. You'd like to have the docks out for some of the growing period.
is it as an issue with winter flounder if they're putting in docks?
Not unless you're driving pilings, which if they're just putting in the float, no, right?
That's a good question. DMF with their comment letters might say yes, but these fish have changed their behaviors and they really don't come in like they used to. The spawning, they used to come in to spawn,
Mhm.
and they seem to spawn outside now.
Oh, really?
And I'm not sure if it's a warming thing. or
Just
it's a-
cleaner water out there?
Cleaner water. It might, they used to come in, do you remember this, Mark, in April, winter flounder would come in, you'd catch them from the bridges.
Yep,
And there was
Oh,
awesome
really?
bridge fishing.
yep,
And there'd be kids lined up at all these bridges.
yep.
And
Cool.
that's gone. And winter flounder they're not gone, but they just don't come in like that.
Hmm.
And so I think it could be a water quality issue, it could be a climate thing,
Hmm.
but,
So that's not really a concern.
no, freshwater ponds, I would worry about the herring spawning in the shallows and not let them put the freshwater docks in early, but we're not talking about that today. I don't think, we're not, so. I don't mind, letting it go in a little bit early in the spring and then maybe even a whole month more in the fall. That wouldn't bother me.
How about just not setting a period?
I like consistency. Well, we should talk about this, because is there any growing period issue to having structures out that's beneficial?
Personally, I mean, I know that they're not supposed to be storing them on the marsh. We're getting better at that, but I would say they in the water by May 1st, and then out by either November 1st or November 15th. I wouldn't move that. The growing season really starts in April, pretty much.
Okay, all right, then
But
Late
you're-
March,
that-
early April.
Your concern is salt marsh.
Mm.
That's really a separate issue. I mean, that's a storage issue.
It is, but I'm just saying, we're never, it's gonna be hard to ever get them all. For storage.
Yeah, I hear what you're saying, but trying to enforce a storage issue by setting dates, it seems we're just,
Well,
we're
there's still-
compounding the problem.
Yeah,
there's still shading that occurs
yeah.
in these docks, and so to say you could put it in April, you might lose, that's gonna cause some more shading, right?
Salt marsh starts usually later
Okay.
than other, like, grass species and other plants. Salt marsh comes back a little bit later. I think you could say, I think still having May 1st is a good in time. But I guess I would either be amenable to November 1st or November 15th. November 15th, I don't think there's anything wrong with November 15th for taking a dock out.
I think one of the selectmen that was really interested in not being restricted on fall activity. And so if we had a date, I wouldn't even mind November 30th. Or maybe Ernie's approach to not have the date, but
Well, we do say 6 months in our regulations, so we gotta find that 6-month window,
okay.
unless we wanna change and say 7 months.
Well, what if the definition of that meant 6 months from the time you put it in? If you put
That
it
makes it
in
hard to track.
June 1st,
Yeah,
6 months later, you gotta have it out.
but we don't ever keep track of when they are going all in.
Well,
you know.
again, it comes back to enforcement. How do you do this?
Yeah, I do like, it would be easier if we had set dates for everybody and not, okay, you didn't put yours until June, so you don't have to take it out to December. So if we could still have those parameters, a set parameter, that would make my job potentially easier.
Using a 6-month window, even if you put them in May 1st, you'd have to have them out by November 1st.
Right.
Yeah,
Can we
which
call-
doesn't work.
Can we call it for a 7-month?
You could just say, maybe you don't even have to have it for a 6-month period. Maybe you can just say docks can be in the water annually from
May 1st?
May 1st to November 15th or 30th. Let me see how it reads.
Yeah.
Can
Maybe we don't have to say 6
turn it
months out of the year,
around?
just get rid of it.
So let's say docks cannot be in the water between December 1st and April 1st?
Yeah, if that makes sense.
Hang on.
I think, people like one of the selectmen, I think, they're thinking about ground fishing. And the month of November is a good month. So I don't see the need to restrict somebody if they want to keep that document to November.
Yeah. I'd rather just, see, I wanna make it as easy as possible to try to enforce it, if,
Yeah.
God forbid, we ever do decide to do that.
So the way we proposed it is that recreational water-dependent structures are to be allowed to be used for 6 months out of the year, May to October, which is actually 5 months. Floats are to be removed from the water by November 1st annually. So I say we just take out recreation, something like, that we do something like this. Recreational water-dependent structures are allowed to be used seasonally, may not be installed until November, or may not be installed until May 1st, and must be removed by November, whatever date you want. But just take the whole 6 months out of there.
Sure.
So,
Still think you'd be better off, from an enforcement perspective, telling them when they can't have them in.
we could do that tactic too, instead of saying you can
December
have them in here, say you can't have them in at this time. I'm okay with either, so.
You said December 1st to April, to March 31st, and they can't be in the water.
Well,
Just added another month.
yeah, it'd be April
That's 8
30th.
months.
April 30th.
Yeah. So,
April 30th.
Well, at some point, what's the point at all? Keep,
well, I know, so what's the problem with 8 months? I mean, what's the harm?
I don't know.
I
I'm just,
think
Additional shading.
April, I'm really concerned about April, of activity in the water column, you know, disrupting, plants getting damaged before they start to grow, maybe. I'm all for December 1st to the end of April. I
Yeah.
think that's a good target.
And it's so much easier for you to then just, if you're driving around or you see a dock in those 5 months, or 5 months,
Well, most of it now is just the gangways and floats that come off the dock. Most of our docks now, the walkway itself is permanent.
yeah, but I mean, as opposed, as Mark said, you know, saying, if you set a 6-month window, you don't know when it's starting or ending. There's no way to enforce that.
I'm fine with either saying they can only be in during this time frame, or that they cannot be in from December 1st to April 30th.
Yeah, I've always taken the position it's easier to tell people what they can't do rather than what they can do.
That's true.
I think for the sake of clarity, that's a good point.
So that would be, there are 30 days in April, so
So December 1st to April 30th?
no, not in water. December 1st, April 30th. Okay, that's one thing. Everybody in agreement? I mean, you'll vote, but, because we have to make, you've already voted, we can do this all together. You already voted to make the changes that we had proposed, so to make an additional change, we should vote on it.
We need to vote on it.
Well, if you have any more changes to the water-dependent structures bylaw, we can talk about those first and then just vote to make all the said changes. Did you have any other proposed changes for water-dependent structures?
well, you're proposing to change the language. I mean, your first item there.
Grandfathering.
Yeah, but I
Yes.
did not like that language change at all.
Okay.
I think it's,
I'm not wedded to anything, so.
Well,
but my
here's-
reading of that language change is that it basically makes any of the subsequent rules, any existing dock not subject to any of the subject rules, even a requirement to file for a permit to make changes to a water-dependent structure.
So if someone puts in a dock today and then a storm comes through, tears it out, that means they wouldn't be subject to the new rules. Is that what you're
Right, but
saying?
even, exactly that, but even, I mean, any change, and I don't know, I had examples when I was reading it, but anything you wanna do, I mean, later in there, it requires people to get permits. And if you're saying at the beginning, if you have an existing dock, none of this applies, then the requirement for a permit to like
Yeah, I hear you.
fix a dock or something is no.
Well, here's the concern that came up from the selectmen, is that they were worried about the Herring River rule. If that goes through, no new docks in Herring River,
Yeah.
would that prevent somebody from rebuilding an existing dock? And that
Yeah.
was never our intention.
Right.
And so he wanted to have something that would grandfather him. I originally hoped that when docks are rebuilt, they could come up to the new regs.
Yeah.
And
I
so-
think we say something like, when needing a rebuild, they become compliant with the current regulations to the maximum extent feasible.
Yep.
Right.
But if they can't, then we wouldn't have power to deny them. If they had an existing licensed dock,
That's
they
great.
could rebuild how it was, but they
Right.
have to do it.
You have to, so you have to have more careful language in here.
Right.
in
Maximum
order-
extent feasible makes a lot of sense to me.
Mm.
There'll be times when they can't, let me think what could come up. I suppose going to a 1:5:1 height to width ratio,
In the length, yeah.
there might be some location where it just look horrible. Or somebody would not want it to come that
Or,
high.
or they just have to replace the decking, we can't make them put new pilings in to get to the
Right.
max height.
Yep, yeah, so I'm all for that. And I think we'd satisfy the selectmen by just clarifying that. They didn't want to be shut down.
Yeah.
And we never intended that.
Yeah, right.
Okay.
I'm not, yeah, I think we just have to,
Yeah, I mean, aesthetics wouldn't have anything really to do with us. It would be more so if they had to go to a certain height, would that increase their length? You know, in order to, that it would be over 80 feet or something like that. Because the higher you are, the more of a step down you'll have eventually to the
Yeah.
float.
Or
So-
say if they're at 2.5 depth at mean low water, and
We
they
go
have
with-
to dredge to go to 3,
Yeah,
we probably wouldn't force them to dredge.
right,
That might be a mistake.
right. But things like replacing decking with more porous decking, those are good changes that are easily made, so. Okay, I can work that up.
Okay.
Okay, good.
any other business?
No, I don't, so we won't vote on that tonight, because I want you to see what
Okay.
the final language is. I'll put it on the next agenda. The next agenda doesn't look too bad. So I'll put this back on. Try to have another executive session next time if people can get in at 6. So plan on that if possible, because I'm hoping we get something from Kopelman and Page about our updates. So, we had just letting you know, we had an awful lot of damage in our conservation areas, or throughout town, actually, throughout the Cape, with the storm last week. We've been working almost every day, helping do tree work. So it's amazing. I mean, a year ago, I couldn't do this, never mind cut trees. So it's quite fantastic, actually.
That's great.
But we've, with the help, a lot of help from the Harwich Conservation Trust, as well as DPW, and a lot of other town volunteers just coming out. We have gotten almost all of our conservation area trails cleaned up. Island Pond got hit the worst, I would say. We had about 20 trees over the trail. Some very easy, just nicely fell over the trail. Easy cut,
Full toppled trees or just branches?
both.
Yeah, I
Fully uprooted 24-inch diameter pitch pines yesterday.
Oh, yeah.
That were snagged over, that collided into other trees and snapped other trees in the process. So it's been a refresher for me on some of my skills, which is fun. But I just wanted to let you know, I mean, I would have reached out to you guys too, but we had enough hands. I'll be asking you for help for other things shortly. But we'll be burning at Thompson's Field. Next Tuesday, it looks like, we're gonna be cutting what we can of the frag at 9 in the morning at the Skinnequit Herring Run for anybody who can join. There's a lot of poison ivy involved, so just be prepared for that if you come. So I just found out I have a department head meeting at 9 in the morning, but I can't miss that one. But Melissa and our member Jody and people from HCT, they can all come. Hopefully Brad, you can come too.
Yeah, do you want to bump a little bit later? Is that good for you?
The low is 8:30, right?
Low is 8:30. I don't have a clear idea in my head when the tide begins to make things deeper there, so I don't.
What I can do,
It's a bit of a delay.
you guys can start, and if
Yeah,
I
well-
get finished early, I'll join you. But I think I can at least have 5, 6, 7 hands, sets of hands for you.
Yeah,
And
that's,
who knows, my meeting, if it stays or not, so.
I think we'll probably get quite a bit done. in
Yeah, and I'll
there.
confirm it with Heinz, and we'll do what we always do, is cut and pile it near the road, DPW come and get it. No,
Great.
that's all I've got for you, that I can think of at this particular moment.
Can't believe the time.
Let's go. Oh, the chairman left.
The chairman, yeah, he forgot to wait for someone
No,
to make
it's
a
fine.
motion.
He'll be right back. I got a bit of a headache, so I wouldn't mind going home and resting my eyes.
Well, I'll move that we.
You can, yeah.
And I'll second it.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Are you the vice
All right.
Stan?
I'm the vice, so,
There we go.
you know,
All right.
Okay.
we're done.
There's some